So, Jamon, could you tell me what it is you do?
Well, I currently live in Berlin, Germany. I work as a uh, SEO, search engine optimization specialist for a promotional merchandising company. But my hobby has been racing and specifically drifting for about ooh, 12 years at this point. But most recently, for the past 4 years, I've been in the mix with my professional career. My hobby has also been in being part of a professional drifting crew. So like a team in what's called Formula Drift in the United States. So I've been doing that since 2021, going back and forth to the States, crewing for a driver named Tommy Lemaire. And yeah, it's been great. So I've been learning a lot through that team, and I've been learning um, the ins and outs of competitive drifting and just applying that to my own car and my hopefully future program. Yeah, but it's been a blast. I'm getting to see a lot, learn a lot, meet a lot, making a lot of important connections, meeting a lot of people, and yeah, that's my in a short nutshell my background.
That sounds really cool. Could you talk a little bit about like the drift crew and what that consists of and what your role is there?
Sure. So you have obviously your driver. The crew tries to just make everything as comfortable for him as possible. You have what's called a crew chief, who basically is the quarterback, telling everyone what to do. You have your spotter. That's someone who is normally in. So drifting is a judge sport. So in the what's called the judges tower, you have your spotters who tell the drivers what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right, who's fast, who's slow, these sorts of things, telling them what the competition is doing. And you have your mechanics, and I'm one of the mechanics. So I primarily, you have like your chief mechanics who knows these cars very very well, who when something goes wrong, if there's a problem with the car, they're the ones that have their hands on it and fixing it. So or if there's some sort of maintenance thing that's a little bit more involved, like changing gearing or um, finding something that might be wrong with the engine or adjusting nitrous pressure or stuff like this. That's what the sort of the chief like the main crew mechanic does. And then you have like the other mechanics. So I'm just one of the other mechanics that I do tires. I work with pressures on grid. I keep the car cool, so spraying the charge air intercooler and the radiator, and really just anything else that they need. I keep the pits organized, and yeah, it really depends on the event and what's needed. Yeah, there have been times where I've helped like swap diffs out and help diagnose transmission issues and things like this. And, helping to fix broken parts, running around the pits to find parts that we may need to borrow from another team. Because so it's a French Canadian team, and it's weird because I'm the only like native English speaker on that team. So it's a little interesting because they sometimes rely on me to say, "Hey, Jamon, we need this part. Our English isn't that good. We need someone to do this quick, and we know you know a lot of the paddock. So can you just find this if possible?" So that's another thing that I've been tasked with in the past. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the basic makeup of a. It's This team isn't bare bones. It's a nicely supported program, but when it comes to the higher level programs such as you have a team called RTR, which is sponsored by Ford Motor Company, and you have another team called Rockstar, which is sponsored by they're sponsored by the Rockstar Energy drink and heavily funded by Toyota. So those teams, you have 15 people doing various different things, but on a team like ours, which is smaller, you know, uh, uh, I guess what you would call a skeleton crew, um, makes it would make up of about Five guys and a driver. So that's sort of the level that we're at right now. But when you get into the $1 million teams, like that's when you would have like people only for logistics, hired paid only for logistics, people hired paid only for coordinating snacks, food, dinners, people coordinating things that we kind of just have to do on the fly, and we don't have that kind of budget. So but yeah, so long story short, I handle tires, swapping tires every run, making sure that our tires are fresh. So we have a on the track we have what's called, well, they're called race treads now, but it's a company that brings like 8 tire machines to every round, and they have a huge tent, huge truck, and people just put their tires in front and have them swap them. So I'm also in charge of making sure that our tires are done on time, so we don't have to rush or be worried that we won't have enough for competition, because you always have to plan for going all top 32, 16, 8, 4 finals. You always have to plan for that, so every team does, so you always have to have enough tires just in case. But yeah, so that's basically what I do on that side.
That sounds really cool. I've never actually heard, well, I know what Formula Drift is, but I did not know about like the different levels. So that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
How did you get into racing and drifting?
Well, it was introduced to me back in showing my age here, but back in '07, I went to my first drift event with my mom actually. I had uh I've known about it through you probably know it, the comic Initial D. Like that's how I learned about what drifting was. And I never really paid that much attention to it because I didn't know it was like a real thing until somehow in Summit Point, West Virginia, you know that track. There's an event called Hyperfest that they used to go there. They don't go there anymore, but there was one in 2007, and my mom was like, "We should go." I was like, "All right, fine." And yeah, that's when I saw like I remember seeing Vaughn Gittin Jr. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's like one of the most famous drivers in the U.S., probably the world at this point. And I remember seeing him. He had his own small, tiny program at that time. He had just a small enclosed trailer with a 240 with an SR in it. And yeah, and so I saw that. I saw the environment. It was really, really cool. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to start getting into that. And I eventually got my first, I had a 95 240 SX. And um, I would just start going to track days. So this was right before I went to college. Um, I would I went to college in Daytona Beach, Florida, and I got my car in 2010. So after my first year in college, um, I worked as a valet, actually, like a valet person in DC, like summer job. So I just saved that to buy it to get the car. And I was too scared to take it on track in Florida because I was too far away from home. So I waited until I was about to graduate, and I went to my first event in 2012. And fun fact, on my third run, I almost rolled the car completely. Like I had my driver's side. No, it was my passenger side. Well, I forget which side it was, but I had one of the sides of the car like 3.5 feet in the air. It almost tipped over, and then I dropped it down. And then after like the adrenaline stopped, the stewards are running over, and I was like, "I'm good, I'm good, I'm good." Car was fine. I just drove off and completed my run. Third run of the day, but it was really cool to get that out of my system, that fear, because I was like, once that happens, it's like it's whatever. So you just continue to learn and get whatever information you can. So I've been driving consistently for since 2013. I would do at least 2 or 3 events a year up until 2017. And that's when I sort of took a break. I started to travel a bit. And then I ended up here in 2020. Obviously, I didn't really do much driving that year or the year after for that matter. But yeah, so that's sort of how I got into it. And I'm digging my claws even deeper. I had no intention of really getting into competitive drifting because I saw how expensive it was and how high pressured it can be and blah blah blah. But when you get into it, it's really not that. Like, yes, there is pressure, and I've never been a driver at a professional level, at a level of that profession, but I I'm so close to it now. It makes me like more and more interested in it. So it's not what I thought. It's not as like scary as I thought it was, or expensive, or I just didn't want to get into that because I knew how much of a rabbit hole that can I can get myself into. But right now I'm really liking it. I'm learning so much. I'm applying it to my own car and my own way of approaching drifting in general. So yeah, I'm happy, and and I'm on a very competitive team too. So we're just coming off of a win in the first pro spec round, which is the league below pro in FD for those who don't know. You We had a win in Atlanta, so it was Tommy's first win of his career, FD win of his career. So that was pretty big. So we're coming off of that, and we have another round in Jersey in end of June. So I'll be there. It'll be fun. If you have time, you should definitely stop by. I don't know where you'll be, but Englishtown, New Jersey is always a great time. And yeah, so that's in general how I got into it. To answer your question, yeah.
That sounds really cool. So what's it like racing in the US versus like the car scene in Europe? Because I know that's probably a big difference.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So when it comes to a professional level, one huge key difference that kind of cascades into a lot of different how like different the driving is at the pro level. In Formula Drift, you don't really have a tire size limit. The how it works is you have to be at a certain weight to run a certain width tire. So the wider tire you want to run, the heavier your car has to be. So, for example, this year, there's a driver named Dean Carney who's running a 355 width tire on his Viper. He's not doing every round, but that's like the widest tire FD has ever seen. And they are allowing it because there's a new tire sponsor coming in and his car is heavy enough, blah, blah, blah. In Europe, in the pro scene, uh, the leading series is called Drift Masters. And I've been to one round. I'll go to a couple more this year as well. Not to crew, just to spectate. Um, and yeah, it's interesting because they limit their tire size to 285 width, which the less tire you have, the less power you can put down to the ground. Obviously, the less power that you can actually use in the car. So having a 1500 horsepower car won't really mean much if you have a 285 tire. So the competition is a little bit it's different in my opinion. In many ways it's better because you have teams that don't have to spend so much money on having these crazy high horsepower big tire cars that break things all the time, because you can't go a season without breaking something at that power level. So it calms things down. It makes the driving a lot more competitive. It makes the cars look nicer because in FD, I know a couple of the Drift Masters drivers, meeting them in the first round, and I remember one of them asking me like, "Dude, why are the cars sitting so high in the US? Like the tires are huge, and you have this insane wheel gap. Like the cars in Europe don't necessarily have that. They sit so much better." I'm like, that's FD, man. Like, so you take notice. The cars look very different, and drifting comes down to style. That's a very important aspect of it. So when it comes to that, it's interesting because in Europe, yeah, that's something that people take pretty seriously over there at that level. So they definitely like their cars looking clean. And another thing is the variety. I mean, in the US, primarily it's, the Chevy LSs and the 2Js, like the Toyota 2JZ engines. That's what dominates drifting over here. But in Europe, people have perfected, well, I won't say perfected, but they are more experts in these weird Volvo engines and weird Mercedes engines and weird, other BMW engines. So there's a lot of variety, and the cars sound a lot crazier. Um, and people aren't really afraid to try something super different over there. People in the States kind of want to follow the recipe that works, and there's not a lot of outside of the box, in my opinion. Um, it's just people just go with with what works and what's proven to work and what has a lot of support, which makes sense. I'm not going to deny that, but it's cool to see some variety. Like for example, there's a guy, his name is Timu something. He has an E-Class Mercedes Benz wagon with a big turbo. It's a big turbo diesel that when you see it drive, whenever he's like letting off, like playing with the throttle, you just see tons of black smoke come out. And there's no car in FD that does that. So very few cars in the States, very few drivers in the States that run diesel drift cars in the first place. Actually pretty common in Europe. But yeah, it's really interesting sight to see because you just see a ton of tire smoke and then a ton of black smoke coming out of the hood. And it's just so cool. And it's even crazier to see in person. So and there's another guy called Larry Heinonen is his name, and he has a NASCAR V8 in his car, and it revs to like 9K, and it's just insane. And he's one of the fastest drivers on grid, and it works. Apparently, his car seems to rarely ever have issues. So I really like the variety over here. The people, um, at the event that I did go to, the pits were way more. I don't want to say friendlier. I mean, it was just more like it felt more like a grassroots event than it did a professional like round. It was a fifth round. It was either the fourth or fifth round last year. So points were pretty important, but you have there was definitely an aspect of being really cool with talking with fans, and you have people from all over the world, obviously, which is another really cool aspect. So in Europe, obviously there are a lot of countries, a lot of different countries in close proximity to each other. So instead of cheering on a driver necessarily, you're just cheering on your country. So that's an aspect that you don't necessarily see a lot um, in drifting in the States. I can't speak for other motorsports because I don't know that well. I really just know drifting, but it's quite rare you'll see like a finished section, cheering on. For example, like in drift matches, you'll see the section of Latvians cheering on, like getting as loud as possible whenever a Latvian driver gets to the line, or a Finnish section where the Finnish fans are known to be like quite loud and supportive of their drivers. So that's also another aspect that's really interesting to see. Like people are just so supportive of who, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're from Norway, you're going to have a Norwegian section cheering you on, and you probably know a few of the drivers or the fans there anyway. So yeah, I really like that aspect of it. It's really it was very, very different, but very enjoyable at the same time. So definitely looking forward to more, um, going to more rounds and experiencing more of that. Hopefully, driving here in the future. I think it would be actually a little bit more exciting to drive here in the future for my purposes. But yeah, we'll see. But for now, I'm really enjoying just getting the best of both worlds, because like I wouldn't say that I'm ahead of the curve, but like I get to see. I have a lot more. What's the best way to put this? I have a lot more awareness of both scenes that apply to drift masters and what applies to the States. So it's just cool, a cool mix of both worlds that I have experience in. And there have been a couple of times now at this point where at FD I'd meet a driver that I met in Norway, like Simon Olsen. He's a competitor in FD this year, and yeah, he remembered me from Norway. I had a chat with him, and then in Germany, he competed in one round in Germany and last year, and we had a chat there, had a chat in FD. So it's like it's cool seeing that and experiencing that and having being able to have that sort of best of both worlds aspect when it comes to drifting. Not a lot of people in the States have that. Like not a lot of people are traveling to Europe to go to drift events. Now they might, because Drift Masters is getting so much more popular, getting so much more attention and traffic. But for now, yeah, I'm still getting the best of both worlds, I think.
Nice. Would you say that drifting is pretty diverse overall?
Mm, Yes, in the sense that there are people that come from all walks of life, but when it comes to representing other people of color, I would say not necessarily. No. In like it's kind of weird to say because I don't often think about it that much, but when I do, then it is heavily, I think it's heavily dominated by it's not necessarily super diverse, I would say. It's still like a boys club. There are not a lot of, African Americans or Latinos in it necessarily here in the States, but as a whole culture, I mean, it's all over the world. There are leagues in South Africa, there are leagues in a lot of leagues in South America. Brazil has a pretty big championship there. But when it comes to like American drifting, and grassroots level, yeah, but the pro level, not necessarily. No, there have been some females that have competed in the past, and we have three competing now. So that's good to see, and we want to see more of that. Um, and we have Lee. He's competing in pro spec first year. He's from Trinidad, so like I think that's the first time I've seen that in FD. But yeah, you have a lot of more influential figures where it gets diverse. So you've probably heard of Hurt Life, the guy who is very, very well known in the circuit, drifting and just in general. But not to just like single out certain people, but just in general, I think the diversity comes from the influencers at this point, and that's important because they help push the sport forward and they bring audiences to it, and they bring uh they bring um I mean, I would say like a lot of the influencers who have a huge following can bring money into FD, for example, but because we've seen that a handful of times. But yeah, it's diverse in its own way. But I would say that when it comes to, yeah, like, well, I mean, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, no,
Or
it does. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Um, so what are some of the biggest challenges you face, like either pursuing drifting or just like the sport, it's like this, like actually drifting itself?
Mm, well, seat time for me is quite difficult because I don't have a car here. And when it comes to motorsports in general, you just need time in the seat to get better at it. The best drivers will drive like every weekend or like every other day, or at least be on a sim or something like that. I don't have any of that, so like that's challenging. Of course, money. There's no way around it. You just need money. Um, there are ways you could do it cheap, but it's not. You need money for it. I would say those two are like the most challenging. I've had uh, I've had sponsors lined up in the past, but I haven't been able to provide any value because I haven't had a car that's been running for like the past 2 years. So that's tough, but managing getting my car running and having the funds to support it, having shops work on it, blah blah blah, that's been a challenge, and it's not the easiest thing to navigate. But in my particular case, yeah, that would be definitely the challenging part. I mean, also not living in the states where my car is, that's a challenge that I put on myself. But yeah, motorsports in general is a money game. So um, it comes down to that. And I mean, obviously, the more funds you have, the easier things are. But it's not a lack of motivation or anything like that. It's just a lack of timing and time in general. I chose to be overseas like that. I'm not sad. I'm happy that I'm here. But I definitely need to just get more seat time. How I do that, I'm not entirely sure yet, but uh, those are sort of the things that like challenge me right now. The driving aspect isn't that challenging. It's having seat time like itself. I'm not scared to drive. Like I'm willing to drive anywhere, but it's having that practice that I am lacking right now. So I'm probably going to suck real hard next time I get in my car, because also it's going to be a completely different car at this point. Like I'm upgrading a lot of stuff on it. So I haven't driven that car in 2 years. So it's going to be weird getting back in it. But I mean, I look forward to that. I really enjoy drifting, driving in general. Like I love being on track. So I'm not worried about that. But the seat time for me, and the lining up like the right sponsors and having enough money to do it is definitely a challenge. But any drifter will tell you that money is always probably money is always an issue. So um or yeah, at this level, if you don't have substantial backing, then money is a problem. But yeah, for me, it's really just seat time, like getting seat time and driving, and yeah. But I'm what's countering that is learning. I learned so much, like just even being in the vicinity of two or three drivers talking about a track and talking about different setups and how different setups affect this certain line. And they have to click fourth down the hill because their car's not gripped up enough, or the car is too gripped up and they had to change gearing. Like hearing stuff like that is just so fascinating to me, and it's addictive. And it's like I learned so much just being a fly on the wall, and that's why I make this sacrifice to go to these rounds, because that's half of it right there. So just being around that environment, you're going to learn so much just by being around them. So that's not a problem. That kind of helps counteract it, because like I know what I want to do when I get in my car. Like I know what settings that I want to have. I know how I like to drive. I know I'm realizing certain things about myself just by being around these guys. So um yeah, long story short, seat time. That's my biggest problem right now. When it comes to like me driving myself, right? Yeah.
Got it. Last question I have for you is any advice you would have for someone that wants to get into drifting, or just advice for me in general as someone who just started racing about 2 years ago?
If you want to get into drifting, it's one of the most accessible motorsports, I think, in the world. You really, and especially now, there's so much aftermarket support and so much that you could do starting out. So if you just want to get a car and go to the track, it's really not that difficult. You can go to any track that holds drifting. There's no requirements except for certain safety requirements, of course. But um, you could take a stock like BRZ, or a stock E36, or a stock Z, and as long as you have like a fire extinguisher and a helmet, you're pretty much good in most tracks. So if you have like a rear wheel drive manual car, just go to a track and try it out. Bring a couple used tires with you and just go. It's that simple. I mean, there's a ton of YouTube videos about drifting now. Obviously, there's simulators that people can try out and get good on that. But I'm a little old school in that fashion, where I say just go to the track. I mean, you'll learn, people will teach you, people will see you struggling trying to get through the track. They'll know it's your first time. And the community is so supportive. They're just going to come to you and say, hey, this is what you want to do. Try this on your next run. Or you can just go up to someone who has like um, who may have like a higher power car, or you've seen them driving around the track and you're like, I want to try it. I want to try the way that they're doing it, and just go. That's what I would say. And but for you, if you want to pursue it even further, I mean, in general, just going, I would say get on a team, get on a pro team. Um, you do road racing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, get on a pro team. Get on some sort of pro like IMSA team, or I don't know. I don't know the leagues in the road racing circuit, but find a pro team to get. Are you on a pro team?
Oh,
Okay, before I assumed, yeah, get on a team and start learning, or maybe go to a driver that you follow or you kind of um, um, model your driving after, or something like that, and then ask, hey, can I crew for you for an event or something like that. That's essentially what I did when I got on Tommy's team. It was I'll go off on a slight tangent here. It was COVID and it was 2021, and a lot of his team couldn't make it down from Canada. And another pro driver put on his story that, hey, there's this guy. He needs someone who can work on drift cars, who've been around high powered cars, who've been around drifting for a while. And I basically gave him my resume. And he was like, "You don't have to tell me that. Just talk to him and tell him that like you found it on my story, whatever." Um, and he was like, yeah, man. I need someone to help with like tires and fuel and stuff like that. So just yeah, and if you could do that, I'd gladly love to have you for the weekend. And that's how it happened. And I wasn't able to. He wanted me to come to. There were two more rounds, and he wanted me to come to both. And I was like, I can't do both. I could do Irwindale, and I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd ever go to Irwindale, California, like the track for drifting. I never thought that would happen, but happened in 2021, and I was super grateful. And then in 22, he asked me to come on full time. So that's how it happened. And those circumstances are a little different, but I would say first get on a team. You're going to learn so much. Crew for someone who has a way more like advanced program, or see if you could get on a team somehow, or just try to be around them and ask questions and learn. I mean, at the grassroots level, there aren't any dumb questions. I don't think people will answer your questions if they know you are at a certain level. um yeah, but and seat time, of course. Like, drive as much as you can. I noticed that my driving was at its best when I drove like 6 events in a summer, and I was like, yeah, I could drive, man. And then I stopped driving for like almost a year and a half, and then I really struggled in the car, same setup, and I really struggled in it. So, yeah, definitely seat time. Try to be around a higher level team. You'll learn so much. And if you want to get into drifting, just go to the track and do it. What car do you drive? You have an
BMW M2.
M2. Okay. Um, yeah. So I mean, those are 6 speed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Easy. um, yeah, but I mean, for anyone getting into drifting, just go to the track, experience it, and then you can start modding your car. Like, there's no need to go to the track once or twice and then spend 20 grand on building like a mid-level car. Like, there's no need for that. But yeah, just go out and do it. But that's my biggest advice. And if you want to get into competitive drifting, people are so open for having help. Everyone would love to have an extra hand on their team. Like, if you ask, they'll probably be like, yeah, cool, or no, but you can watch, or something like that. You'd learn so much. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really incredible. I really enjoyed talking with you. It's been super insightful, and I really want to thank you, and I appreciate everything today. So.
No problem. Thanks. It was great talking to you.